переходим от тела к художнику, к телу куратора. Северин Фроманже, искусствовед, куратор, арт-критик, редактор, куратор музея Тенгли в Базеле и также основатель выставочного пространства «Забридский поинт» в Женеве. И тема доклада «Владение иллюзорностью. Вызовы, курирования, выставок, перформативного искусства». Welcome, Северин.
So good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Olesa, for that introduction. I didn't get much of it, but I'm sure it was great.
I'm sorry, Severin. I would like to add that I actually was dreaming and looking forward for your talk because I missed the actual experience to see your exhibition performance process, but looking forward so much to hear about it. Thank
exactly. It's just a moment. Yeah.
And thank you very much, Olga and Julia, for inviting me today. And congratulations for that amazing, ambitious program that you organized for us. It's great. So, I was asked today to speak about my last project, which focused exclusively on performance art.
So my talk will be about the complexities of featuring live performance in an exhibition. It will be about how to render the corporeal feeling of the live event into a static
place, like a museum, and how the museum could use performance as a tool, as a chance to keep itself alive. As you know, bringing performance art to the museum isn't new at all. You just have the experience of yesterday night. So live performance has been integrated in museal collections and in the program of art institutions with more and more consistency for the past 10, 15 years or so.
For instance, at Ted Britain, Martin Creed hired a team of runners, and for 4 months, they were running as fast as they could every 30 seconds through the galleries. Of course, at the MoMA in 2009, it was possible to see most of the performative works of Marina Abramovic reenacted. And this very challenging work of Tania Bruguera, consisting of 2 office policers and 2 horses, entered the Tate Modern Collection a few years ago. These are just to name few famous examples of what has been done recently in regard to performance within the art institution. Still, performance touch upon the most challenging and demanding for a museum. What it is valued in a museum, its stability, fixity, permanence. These are its valued attributes, its basis, its missions in a way. In other words, museums were conceived as keepers of silent objects, as keepers of artworks conceived as precious objects whose boundaries need to be fixed for posterity. Performance, with its immateriality, its slippery nature, its refusal to settle, its fleeting artworks, questions and challenges the museum goals, question its form and functions. So here is an image from our collection, from the Museum Tengli, an action by Jean Tengli, who was an European pioneer regarding performance art. And his work is represent our main collection. This is Study for an End of the World #2. It's an explosive action staging an end of the world that took place in the Nevada desert in 1962, addressing the fear of the Cold War at the moment of its highest peak. With performance, Tengli was attracted to the fact that an ephemeral act can challenge art conventions. Performance can unsettle art's easy collectability, subverting the performance of painting or sculpture. Indeed, the explosive nature, the destructive or ephemeral nature of some of his artworks makes it obviously impossible to preserve or to reenact. So today I would like to problematize my contribution in a way that allow us to open new possible perspectives on how to bring liveness into the museum without threatening the very nature of what is a museum. And for that purpose, I will focus on my recent project, Performance Process, a project that took place in Museum Tengli, in Kunsthalle Basel, and in Kaserne Basel. Here is our first flyer, and in the background you can see an action by Urs Luthi and David Weiss. So Performance Process was a sort of takeover of the city of Basel by three fundamentally different kind of cultural institutions. A museum with a collection, Museum Tengli, a Kunsthalle for contemporary exhibition, Kunsthalle Basel, and a venue for performing arts, a theater, Kaserne Basel, which means three very different kind of history, three very different institutional backgrounds, formats, audiences, and perspectives. Our three institutions were cooperating exceptionally for the first time. So we were trying to map, to document, and to present the historical landscape of performance art in Switzerland from the early 60s until today. So as Kaserne was doing a festival of performance, it was, when we started the project, it was also decided that Kunsthalle will focus exclusively on the pure ephemerality of performance art, on the pure liveness. So in the exhibition, it was no documents, no props, or any traces of past performances. Rather, it was a month-long exhibition of the performance themselves. Here you can see the artist Raphael Efti playing with the visual codes of both abstract expressionism and public road marking to conceive and create an only temporary indoor floor painting. So he was using very precise industrial techniques to create a work which could resist under the most difficult circumstances outside, on the roads, but which was here meant to disappear just after the action was over. And indeed, just after its creation, it was thrown in the garbage. So this work, specially made to resist time and erosion, disappeared at the exact moment of its creation. With Claudia Comte, it was pure play, pure battle, designed only for the joy and enthusiasm of the competition. Here, she orchestrated a game carried out by lumberjacks who transform loads of timber into geometric sculptures. This had no other purpose as to create a specific atmosphere for one evening only. And with its staging, with a DJ playing music to encourage the two teams, it reminds a popular hip-hop or dance battle, bringing also a sort of light nightlife situation into the gallery. Yves Scherer created a miniature exhibition within the exhibition. A series of contemporary artworks were represented into the fingernails of a performer, and the performer was walking through the galleries on specific days. It was a sort of difficult artwork to catch, as it implied to look for it without knowing what it was or who was carrying it. At Museum Tengli, performance was also the core of the exhibition, not the side event, not the side show, but the main program. The challenge was to create an exhibition full of life, full of movements, bringing a sort of excess within the museum, not only for one night or 1 week, but for the 5 months duration of the exhibition. So traveling within 60 years of performance art in Switzerland, for us, it was clear that we were going to show documents, archive
material, videos, photographs, which could present this history. And documents, rather than being just or simply a dead equivalent of a live event, it can be much more than that. Documents could be incredibly powerful. It can prompt imagination. The documentation of performance art also brings with it a sort of second-hand nature. And archive material is surely interesting for research purposes. But how to make somehow an equivalence to it in the exhibition? How to make us feel the liveness of the performance when looking at the documentation?
So to avoid presenting only leftovers and to respect the initial intention of the artist, we have asked the artists themselves to organize
with us their own archive material. So such material was presented as an artwork per se, showing an already organized and chosen perspective on the past performance. Every archive takes with it its own rules and protocols. This is why we were working very differently with artists such as Dieter Meyer, Manon, Osluti, or Eric Catan. Dieter Meyer chose himself the photograph of past performances he wanted to show and that completely delegated the display to us, with the only recommendation to make good use of this curatorial freedom. So instead of presenting the archive in a very precise and organized way, we decided to create a sort of new narrative and propose these landscapes of past performances which react one to the other. With such material, it was like working with a sort of wildlife archive, an archive that can be rearranged differently at any given time. Osluti, on the opposite, on the contrary, completely reworked his photograph of his seminal performance of the 70s and decided exactly how he wanted them to be framed, hanged, and displayed. Eric Catan created an installation purely out of the leftover of a past performance, out of the clothes he was wearing for this occasion, thus reactivating the presence of its own body even in its absence. With Manon, we worked simply on the size of the photograph, documenting one of her important performances from the late 70s, where she was staging men as object of desire in a front store during one evening in Zurich. Enlarging the size of the photograph gave the possibility to have a sort of life-size experience of this unusual window shopping situation. Videos had obviously a very important place in the exhibition and were bringing a very strong bodily presence. With Laribot, with this projection on a video on the floor, showing her dancing, moving around, displacing objects, filming herself, speaking, you could literally enter the video, walk on a walk, being totally surrounded by sounds and moving images. The installation was organized in order to provide a very close encounter with the image of the artist, with her body, in a confrontation that could be also slightly intimidating. And of course, music and sounds were also crucial in bringing the sensation of a vivid, sometimes very chaotic, even oppressive atmosphere. Like with this piece by Christian Marclay, who has been a pioneer for the introduction of music and sound into the visual art. Here, the installation staged 4 synchronized videos. On the 4 screens, we see hands and fingers of Marclay scratching and manipulating vinyl records. The records are damaged, the needle jumps, and all of that creates a new music, far away from the original one. And this piece carries with it a very loud musical background, bringing a sonorous, cacophonous peak within the exhibition itself, which becomes overwhelming, disturbing, and projects the spectator into mixed feeling. So right through the presentation show, this element of life, experiments, movements, sounds, and chaos were present, bringing to the spectator a sensory and spatial experience. But visitors were also surprised by some apparition in the exhibition, like the one of Heinrich Huber. It was not a show, it was not scheduled, it was not announced. It was a sort of secretive artwork, appearing at unannounced moments. Here, the artist was activating a performative sculpture, delivering an abstract poetry made to catch the visitor at any given time. St. Keller also was coming very often to the museum, but only by appointment with a visitor. St. Keller also was coming very often to the museum, but only by appointment with a visitor. For St. Keller, the museum functions as a host. It's a place for conversation, and all his performative works operate as a tool for mediation. He proposed to install an hairdressing salon for the duration of the exhibition. The hairdressing salon is a situation that brings 200 persons together, and it has the potential to create a sort of intimacy, a sort of contemporary confessional. Taking this situation in the artist and a work of art, demystifying at the same time the cultural institution, the work of art, and the artist. He also conceived several other pieces and actions specially for the exhibition, like sleeping outside of the museum or proposing grouped and personal guided tours. And he was also, as you can see, bringing people to the museum, literally lifting them up, thus offering a different point of view on the institution. Florence Young is an artist working on the oral, immaterial, and confidential dimension of performance. Her works often take part in just hearing about it. It's based on rumor, conversations, suppositions, and you eventually don't even know if it actually happened. Here, in this picture, you can see my arm with 2 o'clock. So I was activating the piece. Okay. And that was an object that was this clock, which is a Rolex, but a false Rolex. And I was carrying it during the whole duration of the show, within my working hours, but also outside of the museum, on my private life, sharing also the responsibility of the piece, the responsibility of the very existence of the work. So activating the performing piece, I was expanding the exhibition outside and beyond the limitation of the museum. I was carrying part of the show anywhere, anytime, provoking some conversation about the fact I was suddenly wearing a very expensive watch, and it happened. All of that, the object, the conversation, the contract between the artist and myself, and the rules around this piece, constituting the performativity of the piece itself. And here are some actions that were slightly troubling our operational strategies, subtly shifting our museum's protocols. Martina Sophie Wilberger works on language and sounds.
At Museum Tengli, she interacted with the audience and with her performers. She shouted, runed, played, all that sort of things that are actually forbidden, obviously, in a museum. So doing so, she was introducing a sense of playfulness and smooth provocation in the whole museum. John Armleder and Christian Marclay came for a duo of joyful, fluxus, spirited action. It was hilarious, it was sometimes dangerous, when they almost spark a fire in the whole museum, and at times unspectacular and deceptive, and subtly playing with the expectation of the audience. And our exhibition was closed by a unique concert given by Christian Marclay. He conceived his concert to react to the work of Jean Tengli, which you can see here in the picture, creating an improvised music based on the sound given by the objects and artworks he was manipulating. This is a rehearsal of the concert. So Marclay was playing the sculptures from our collection as it was his instruments. It was sculpture from the 60s, very fragile objects. Some of them he could only play for a few seconds or a few minutes. And for him, the performance was designed as a tribute to Tengli, who has been an influential figure for Marclay, a sort of artistic role model at a very young age, and probably the reason why he became an artist. So it was a fantastic chance to see all this object, all this culture moving all together, especially because Tengli was an artist who never wanted to see his art looking like a dead thing or leftovers of an activity. But of course, it hasn't been an easy task at all to convince the various authorities of the museum to let Christian Marclay doing so. In particular, convincing our restorer was the most difficult part. It has been all about trying to find a balance between our conservation missions and the will to give the possibility to an artist to make an amazing new work in a sort of post-mortem collaboration that surely Tengli will have very much enjoyed. So the medium liveness is pressing on the institutional habits of the museum itself, on museal authorities, on the museum behaviors, and force changes which then can be embedded. Live performance can also show the provisional live nature of the museum itself in ways that help us to evolve and change. I'm convinced that museums are also sort of organic entities capable of reacting to the new and the no, to the live and the unexpected. In that sense, performance brings to the museum something that museums today deeply need. It brings a territory of friction, of confrontation, of freedom. For that, the museum must adapt itself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Severin.